In today's code review, we're going to look at another project someone did as a code challenge for an interview. The project's got a login mechanism which can distinguish between administrators and normal users. Now, when you log in as an administrator, you've got a dashboard where you can see all the test subjects. A test subject is basically a person that can log in and fill out questionnaires. An administrator can also view all the submitted questionnaires. Now, when you log in as a test subject, you've got a dashboard where you can see all your completed questionnaires. You also have a button up the top where you can submit a new questionnaire. Now, there's two parts to this project. It's got a front end and a back end. The back end API is developed using Laravel, and the front end is developed using React. Today, we're going to look at the code for the API in Laravel. But if you guys want me to do a video on the front end, just leave a comment down below and we can look at the React side as well. Hey guys, I'm Dan and this is PixelFix. I'm here to do another code review, and hopefully within the code review I can point out something that you can use or that will help you in one of your future projects. If you like these kinds of videos and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out when I upload more content like this. Okay, so let's jump in and look at the routes file. Okay, now within our routes file I can see we only have a few routes and they are all grouped together nicely. So there's a good thing there. Only thing I would do is just remove this line. Now another thing I can see is the developer is using policies in order to restrict access to the application, differentiating between the users and the administrators. However, the developer is using the middleware method in order to apply these policies to the route. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it this way because otherwise Laravel wouldn't allow us to do it. But I think we can differentiate a little bit more between policies and actual middleware. That is why Laravel provides us with the can method in order to apply these policies to the routes. So we can just change it like so. And we can change this one as well. Can view any. And then instead of this string, we can now actually call the class by its name. So it's user class. Another good thing about doing it this way is now that you've used the class namespace, you can actually click on the class and go directly to it. Okay, so let's just change our last one. We can say can, and we can view the user. I'm a big fan of using resource naming conventions within my controllers. So I would extract this method into its own controller. So let's just do that. Let's create a new controller, PHP artisan make controller, and we'll call it user submission controller. Something else I want to mention before we move on is naming conventions and consistency. If we look at our controllers, the user controller uses the singular word user, but test submissions use the plural. Now, as we can see, there's an inconsistency in the naming conventions. It doesn't matter whether you choose to use singular or plural versions, just keep them the same throughout your application. That's really important. I personally like to call my controllers the singular version the same as the models. So in this case, I would rename this to test submission controller instead of test submissions controller. But I'm not going to do that now, otherwise it will break the rest of the application. Okay, so let's extract this method now into the separate controller. So we'll just cut that out, go to our user submission controller, and we can paste it in, and now we can call this store. And let's just import the rest of our models and the resource as well. And then back in our API file, we can then import our user submission controller. And we can call the store method. Next, within our test submissions controller, if we look at the show method, we can basically get rid of this line of code by taking the relationship and return it directly inside the resource. Next, we can look at cleaning up the store method, and we can start by extracting this validation into a dedicated form request class. Okay, so let's create a request, PHP artisan make request, and we'll call it store test submission request. Okay, within our request, okay, we just go back, we just copy our rule, which is just one rule, and let's just clean this up and make sure we set our return types. We return this default true because we're not doing any authorization within this request, and array, and then we just paste in our rule which says question 4 is required. Now back in our controller, we can ask Laravel to inject our store test submission request instead of the default request. And then we can basically get rid of all these lines because our request will handle all our validation. We can also get rid of this line because we can see the fields are not used anywhere within our method. So we can remove that as well. Now the next line we can remove is this one. We can rely on Laravel's dependency injection. So we can ask Laravel to inject a test submission instance for us, and we'll call the test submission. And now basically we can remove this line of code. Okay, so the next section we can look at is the for loop, because currently there's 4 queries being run in order to add a submission response to the test submission. We can also utilize the submissions relationship on the user model in order to save our information rather than setting the subject ID on the test submission ourselves. We can start off by getting the user from the request and structuring our array of data. So we'll say submission data is an array, and our first element would be another array of question ID, which would be 1, and our answer would be request question 1. And now we can copy this 4 times because we've got 4 questions and 4 answers. Just do 3 and 4, and at the end we would 2, 3, and 4. Okay, something I didn't mention earlier is within our submission request, we should put some kind of validation on our fields, even though they're not required. And we can do this by specifying the field name. All right, and then instead of required, we can make it sometimes, and then when it is provided, it needs to be a string, for example. And we'll just make it a string, and string, and then the only question that is required is question 4. Okay, so back in our controller, now we want to combine this, setting the user ID or the subject ID on the test submission with the actual save on the user. And we can do this by using the user and then calling the submissions relationship, which was defined in our user model. Then we want to call the create method on it because we want an instance of the test submission. And then what we can do is we can call the submission responses relationship, which was defined on the test submission model. And then we invoke the function or the method, and we call the create many method, and then we can pass in our submission data variable. And now we can remove this for loop as well. Okay, so our return statements can be done in several different ways. So the first way I would change this is to remove this and then wrap our code in a try-catch block, like so. And we'll just say, we'll just accept the, or catch the default exception, because we don't know what kind of exception it's going to be at the moment. And we'll say we'll handle the exception accordingly. And then we'll take this line of code, and then inside our try, we'll just return a new test submission collection and pass in the collection. Let's just change this so it's easier to read, and change this like so, and we'll clean up this. So yep, it's a little bit easier to read. The problem with this is if your application grows and you find yourself implementing the same logic for the same type of exceptions, you're going to find a lot of code duplication. And the way around that is just to remove the try-catch block, like so, and then implement the exception handling logic inside the exception handler class for that specific exception. Okay, now back in our controller, we can actually clean up this method a little bit more by not assigning the user to a variable, but getting it straight from the request, like so. All right, and then we actually not using the test submission class or instance, so we can remove that, and we can also remove the dependency injection we added earlier. Okay, great. That should be it for this store method. As you can see, it's a lot cleaner, a lot shorter, and definitely a lot more functional. The last small thing I want to show you is something I see junior developers tend to do a lot, and that is checking whether the count of a collection is bigger than 0. Not knowing there's a built-in method called isNotEmpty. But that aside, this index method returns a 400 message or 400 error code when no responses are found. Personally, I wouldn't do something like this. I would just return an empty collection and let the front end decide what to do with no results. So what I'll do is basically just take this line, remove it, and then return it like so. And that's it for this code review, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope this helped you in any way. If it did, I would like to hear about it, so please leave a comment down below. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. And also remember to turn on the notifications so you don't miss out when I upload more content like this. Until the next episode, guys. See you later.